Today we're kicking off a brand new series called TBD, talking about how we can make the most of every stage of life. Whether you're towards the beginning of your journey or you're all the way over here, we're talking about finding significance right where you are. Well, hey everyone, welcome to Epic Everywhere, practical teaching to help you grow in your faith no matter where you are on your spiritual journey. I'm so glad that you made it today. If you're new around here, chances are somebody invited you or you found us through a search or a scroll, and I might not know you yet, so let me introduce myself. My name is Emily and I'm the pastor of Epic Online, and I'm so glad that you're here. So what can you expect in today's episode? Well, I mentioned we're launching a brand new series today called TBD, so it's a great day to be here. We've got a great message ahead, and we'll be sharing some ways that you can get connected. So the first step I want you to take each week when you're joining us, whether it's on Sunday or another day of the week, is to text in. You can go ahead and text in today by using the QR code on the screen or going ahead and texting here to 215-999-8575. And so when you text in, it does two things. One, it lets us know that you're here, which helps us better care for you and pray for you. Two, you'll also get access to the Hub, which has some helpful content that'll help you make the most of today's experience, and it also keeps you in the loop on things that are going down at Epic. One of the things that you'll find info on is Mother's Day. Believe it or not, yeah, Mother's Day is next Sunday. So if you're a mom, we appreciate all, and I mean all, that you do. So as a small token of thanks, if you're in the Philly area on Mother's Day, we're going to offer free professional photographs for you and your fam at our in-person locations. And listen, if your mom isn't in Philly or you can't be in person, invite her to watch our online Mother's Day episode with you. I've heard of so many of you who watch each week with parents or siblings or friends, and I think it just helps to make that distance seem not so far away. So invite someone to join you next week. Well, one of the things I love about our church is that we have some pretty talented and creative people. On May 17th, we're actually hosting an open mic night to put that on display. So if you're a singer, a poet, a comedian, musician, or maybe all of the above, come hang out with us and showcase your talents and celebrate those gifts that God's given you. Open mic is open for anyone to come and watch and enjoy, so mark your calendars and invite some friends. It's going to be a really great night. So to sign up, get more info, head over to the Hub. We've got a link there just for you. Lastly, I just want to take a moment and encourage you in our giving. On the Hub, you'll notice a button where you can give. To everyone who gives regularly, thank you. If you're not in the habit of giving yet, I want to invite you to create that habit today. We give collectively, and it does make such a difference in the lives of so many people. And through your generosity, we're able to create a place where people can come and experience church in a way that they might not have experienced before, realizing that church and following Jesus really is something that can make a huge difference. So thank you so much for giving and helping to create that kind of place right here. If you'd like to give today, you can do that in the Hub or by heading to epic.church/give. Well, right now it's time to get to today's message, so let's get to it.
Hey everybody, my name is Kent. I'm lead pastor here at Epic, and I'm so glad that you're doing church with us today. We're kicking off a brand new series called TBD, and over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about making the most of every stage of life. And we're calling it TBD because whether or not you're making the most of the stage of life that you're in right now, or if you'll make the most of the stages of life that are yet to come, that is TBD. It's to be determined. Now, I want to give you a quick overview of this series because I'm super excited about it. And next week, we're going to talk about the growing stage, where you ask questions like, who am I? And who am I becoming? And then after that, we're going to talk about adulting. And what am I going to do with my life? And who am I going to do it with? Then we're going to talk about juggling. It's like, now that I have all these responsibilities and obligations, how do I manage it all? And then we're going to wrap up the series by talking about finishing, where you're wondering, am I a success or a failure. Listen, it's going to be a great series. So I want to encourage you, make sure that you don't miss it. Now, today is a bit of an all skate. I just wanted to encourage you, regardless of what season or stage of life you happen to be in right now. If you think about it, I think that the stages that we go through in life can pretty much be summed up by the different modes of transportation that we have along the way. I mean, isn't that true? Yeah, it is. Like you start out with one of these things. Yeah, it's a baby walker. Like anyone got one of those things kind of rolling around the house right now? It's the first thing that you get that actually has wheels on it. So it really is like your first real mode of transportation. And what you do is you plop the baby down in this thing, and then it's got bumpers all the way around it. And so they're free to go all over the place without any fear of them getting hurt. The one that we had whenever our kids were little, and the one that I had whenever I was little, actually had a tray on it. So you could throw like Cheerios on there and a sippy cup, and they were free to roam and kind of eat as they went around. Now, honestly, it's like their first real drive-through experience, eating on the go. And then after that, eventually you get into something like a big wheel. Remember these things? Man, they were so much fun. They were a ton of fun because if you did it right, like you could spin out around a corner and you could leave these black tire marks on the pavement. I loved doing that when I was a kid. Now, way back, I heard that they used to have big wheel races for kids. And I heard about this one guy who actually trained his kids for these races by tying cinder blocks to the big wheels and had them ride uphill. And no lie, I'm not even kidding. One of his children went on to become an Olympic athlete. There you go, start him young. Anyways, after you go through the big wheel phase, you graduate to your first real bike. Now, this is a huge accomplishment because ultimately the bike that you ride only has two wheels, and you got to learn to ride that thing. Now, some people kind of get it out of the gate, get it pretty easily, but others, it takes a little while. Now, I made the mistake as a dad of waiting too long to teach my son Cohen how to ride his bike. And here's the thing, if you're gonna teach your kids how to ride their bike, you gotta make sure you do it before they know that they can't trust you. You know what I mean? I remember Cohen was so hyper-focused on all the different ways that he could get hurt. And I just looked at him, I was like, buddy, you're gonna be fine. Like, trust me, it's gonna be okay. And so I'm running along beside him, doing the thing that you do as a dad, and I'm helping him balance along the way. And then I got to that point where you're supposed to kind of just let go without them realizing it, and they just kind of sail off on their own. And so I got to that point and I let go. And as I did, I wanted to make sure he had enough momentum. So I just gave him a little push, a little shove, straight into a curb. Oh man, it was so bad. He just like flipped over his handlebars and he landed on the ground and he looked up at me with these eyes that said, "See? I told you." I felt terrible as a dad. It was not good. Now, whenever I was a kid, we lived on a military base. And so when we got bikes, we went all over the place. Like we rode our bikes everywhere you could ride a bike to. We were like a little biker gang riding around. And we'd jump stuff and we'd do tricks. In fact, I had this one move whenever we went to the baseball field. I'd pull up toward the field, and I do this dismount where I jumped off of my bike while it was still moving and just let my bike continue on and crash into the fence. And I just stand there like, yep, I'm here. I felt like the coolest 9-year-old on the planet. Now, this is a picture of the bike that I had. The 1988 Huffy with the splatter paint job and the white tires. Whoo, couldn't tell me nothing. Listen, our bikes back then, they didn't have gears. Gears were for punks. We had 2 gears. There was regular and then the stand up and pump your legs till they fall off gear. That was it. Those were the only 2 gears. If you were going uphill, you just pushed until you made it. That was it. Now, I loved that bike. And the reason why I loved it is because it was my first real taste of freedom. And then I got to one of these. Yeah, a skateboard. Now, listen, little PSA about a skateboard. I've got one here. Just because you were able to do this as a kid, don't let that fool you into thinking that you could still do it now as an adult. Almost killed myself in the garage when last time I tried to jump on one of these things. But a skateboard, doesn't this like perfectly describe middle school? Like those middle school years? Like, isn't everything just kind of a little wobbly as you walk through that season of life? Everything's a little awkward. Like your voice starts changing. Girls are a foot taller than all the boys, right? You go back and forth between wanting to just be a kid and act like a kid to wishing everybody would actually treat you more like an adult. It's just a real wobbly stage or time in life. And then comes a time when you finally get your driver's license. Now listen, my daughter Kaylee is learning to drive right now, so watch out, world, she's coming for you. No, I'm kidding. She's actually doing really well. But I remember those days. I remember when I first got my license. I mean, any excuse I could use to get behind the wheel, I was all about it. I would say to my parents, hey, you need something from the store? I'll go, whatever it is you need. In fact, one time, it was after dinner, they're like, I'd love to have some ice cream. I was like, I'll go get some ice cream. And so I went to the grocery store to get a pint of ice cream. And I got to drive my dad's blue Cadillac. And he liked that thing so much, he had two of them. I kid you not, he really did. He had two of the exact same car, which is a good thing, because I definitely wrecked one of them. I wrecked that thing. I wrecked it trying to park. If you know anything about those old Cadillacs, they are boats. They're huge. So I had no clue what I was doing, and I ended up just running right into the car that was parked right beside me. Anyways, when I did get to drive, I felt so free. I mean, all of a sudden, I felt so independent. In fact, do you remember your first car? My first car wasn't a car, it was a truck. It was an '89 Toyota SR5. I loved that thing. I took it on dates. I had one hand on the wheel and the other hand reached all the way as far as I could around my girlfriend. And she would scoot as close as she could, like all the way up on like halfway on the console. I'm gonna be honest, it was uncomfortable, but it was also wonderful. It really was. So I'd drive around in that car. It was great. We had a great time. But then, you do that for a while, but then things change. You get married, and all of a sudden she scoots over to her side of the car. You still do that reach thing, except now you're not reaching across. You're kind of reaching back just to kind of keep your kids from killing each other and try to get them under control. You used to have 2 doors. Now you got 4. And what's worse, it's on a minivan. How'd you get a minivan? You didn't want a minivan, but here you are, right? With car seats and crayons and old waffle fries from Chick-fil-A stuck between the seats. You used to have golf clubs in your trunk. Now, you got a stroller and a change of clothes for each kid in case things go south for some reason, right? It's like a mobile storage unit is what you drive around in. You suffer through that for a few years, your kids get a little older, and then you come to the point where you finally decide, you know what? I am never gonna drive another minivan a day of my life. So what do? You go out and you get one of these. That's right, a Harley Davidson, a motorcycle, driving down the highway, looking for adventure, born to be wild, right? The wind's blowing through the 3 hairs that you got left, you're just living it up. It's like a full-blown midlife crisis. But here's the thing, if you're not careful, you end up in one of these, right? In a wheelchair. Why? Because you had no business riding around on a motorcycle at your age. Now, I want to take a second and I want to talk about this wheelchair because for some of you, for whatever reason, a wheelchair actually has become your mode of transportation. Now, I just want you to know that you guys, now you're our heroes. Really, what you go through just to get around, what you go through just to make it to church, wow, it's amazing all the things that you do. You're an inspiration and we're so proud of you. And whenever I see one of these, when I see a wheelchair, I think of Johnny Erickson Tata. Johnny Erickson Tata had a diving accident when she was 17 and was paralyzed from the neck down immediately. It was a terrible, terrible, unfortunate accident. Well, she fell into a deep depression, and in that depression, when she was stuck in the room, not being able to move or go around trying to rehab, she prayed, God, if I can't die, then at least teach me how to live. And God answered that prayer. And she's now in her 60s, and God has used her to do so much. I mean, she really is incredible. Like, she oozes with joy. She's written several books and songs. She paints these incredible paintings by holding the brush between her teeth. Can you believe that? You guys see these things, they're incredible. In addition to all of that, Johnny also leads an organization called Johnny and Friends, where they provide hope through hardship. And they give wheelchairs to people who struggle with disability all around the world. And they've done that for years and years and years. And most of all, they share the love of Jesus with all the people and the families that they serve. In one of her books, she writes this poem that's just stuck with me over the years. It's called Johnny's Waltz. Here's what it says, or here's an excerpt. It says, though I spend my mortal lifetime in this chair, I refuse to waste it living in despair. And though others may receive gifts of healing, I believe that he has given me a gift beyond compare. For heaven is nearer to me, and at times it's all I can see. Sweet music I hear coming down to my ear, and I know that it's playing for me. For I am Christ's own bride, and redeemed one day, I will stand by his side. He will say, shall we dance? And our endless romance will be worth all the tears that I've cried. Whew. And then you get to the stage of life where you're just not moving around like you used to, right? All of a sudden you find yourself back to another walker, except this one is for older people. Things start breaking down. Life becomes a series of doctor's appointments, and honestly, it's a difficult season in life. And some of you are there right now. Or maybe like me, some of you maybe have gone through a season where you had to care for a parent who was like that. A parent who had a series of doctor's appointments and an illness and a sickness. I want to tell you about my dad. My dad was the best. I mean, he really was the best. He officially became my dad when I was 11 years old. He was my stepdad, but he was my dad. You know what I mean by that. He raised me. Around that time when I was 11, I remember he gave me this bracelet, and on the bracelet, he put a little engraving on it, and all it said was my hero. What I didn't know is that he'd spend the next 20 plus years being mine. He was strong. He was patient. He was loving. He worked hard. He was just good at stuff. You know, those kind of people. It's like, man, that guy's just good at everything. He taught me how to be a man. We knew something was wrong when all of a sudden he had lost a bunch of weight kind of fast. Went to the doctor and found out that it was stage 4 cancer. And I gotta tell you, those next 4 years were a long, hard fight. Some of you might be going through something like that right now. And we just tried our best in that season to bring joy and happiness and just make the most of the time that we had. And my dad, he went from being at home to being in the hospital, to going to a rehab, to coming back home again, to hospice, to I can't wait till I get to see him again one day in heaven. And here's what's cool about that. My hope, the hope that I have that I'm gonna see him again one day in heaven is only possible because of Jesus. Now, it doesn't always go like this, but pretty much life really is from walker to walker. Now, I just want to share real quick just a couple of reflections that I had as I was thinking about it. Real simple, nothing too complicated today. The first one is this. Life is so short. Life is so short. Like all of this from walker to walker, it happens in the blink of an eye. I remember old people always saying to me something like, man, you better cherish this season of life, or you better cherish this time that you have with your kids. And I'd always just think to myself, that's just what old people say. But now I believe them. Now I get it. It really does go by so fast. I mean, it was just yesterday I was running around on that bike on that military base. It was just yesterday that I was learning how to do an ollie on my skateboard. It was just yesterday that my kids were bumping around our little living room in their little baby walker. It was just yesterday, and now, man, all that's gone. And whenever I think about this, I'm reminded of what it says in James chapter 4, verse 14. It says this, it says, your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while, and then it's gone. You know, the morning fog, that thing rolls in and rolls out by 8:30. It's gone. He's saying, hey, that's your life. That's why old man Moses said this over in the Psalm 90, verse 12. He says, teach us to number our days and recognize how few they are. Help us to spend them as we should. There's a guy named Solomon. He was a king, he was wise, but he certainly made his fair share of mistakes. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it serves as sort of his journal where he wrote down a lot of the things that he learned. And in this moment of reflection, here's what he says, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, starting verse 1, he says this, he says, remember your creator in the days of your youth. Hey, what he's saying is, hey, listen, connect with God early on in your life. Like somewhere between the big wheel and getting your first car, make sure you try to hook up with God early in your life. And then he goes on in real poetic fashion to describe what it's like to age. I want to read this section of this passage to you. He says this, connect with God early in your life. He says, before the days of trouble come and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark. He said, hey, connect with God before the time in your life when you know that death is just around the corner. And he goes on, he says, and the clouds return after the rain. He's talking about the bouts of depression and despair and loneliness that people tend to go through as they get older in life. He says, when the keepers of the house tremble. What do you think he means by that? When the keepers of the house tremble? Yeah, whenever your hand starts to shake, starts to tremble. He says, and the strong men stoop. He says, hey, connect with God before your back goes out. I saw this thing the other day, it made me chuckle. Here's what this guy said. He said, my favorite memory from when I was a kid was my back not hurting. Isn't that true? It's funny. It's funny. Anyways, he goes on in the passage. He says, when the grinders cease because they are few. What do you think that is? Yeah, it's your teeth. He says, when your grinders cease because they are few. You got some spaces between them jokers, right? And those looking through the windows grow dim when your eyes start to go. When the doors to the street are closed and the sound of grinding fades. He's saying when you can't work, when those open doors begin to close. When people rise up at the sound of birds, but all their songs grow faint. He says when you start waking up earlier and earlier, not because you wanted to, but just because you're just up. And the birds are chirping at that time of day, but you can't hear them. When people are afraid of heights and of the dangers in the streets. He says, whenever you start being a little more careful because you realize how fragile you are, a little more fragile than you used to be. It's like, I'm not climbing that ladder. Somebody else can do that. When the almond tree blossoms, that's when your hair turns white. And the grasshopper drags itself along. That's when you start moving a little slower than you did before. And desire no longer is stirred. You can figure that one out yourself. Then people go to their eternal home and mourners go about the streets. Listen, gang, all that happens in the blink of an eye. From walker to walker, Solomon is saying life is so short. So connect with God early on if you can help it. Like if it's up to you, connect with God, have God in your life early on in your life so that you can spend a lifetime, so that you can spend eternity experiencing his grace and goodness and peace and purpose in your life. And then here's reflection number 2. Life is so short and sometimes it's hard, but God is so faithful. God is so faithful. I love what it says in Hebrews chapter 13 about Jesus. Verse 8, it says, Jesus Christ is what? The same yesterday and today and forever. In a constantly changing world, in a constantly changing life, there is one thing that is rock solid. There's one thing that never changes, that's absolutely consistent, immovable, true, and faithful. His name is Jesus. In Numbers chapter 23, verse 19, it says this, God is not human that he should lie, not a human being that he should change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? Of course not. No, God is faithful. Here we see that he keeps his promises. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23 says, let us hold unswervingly to the hope that we profess, for he who promised is faithful. In his book, Ruthless Trust, Brennan Manning says this. He says, to trust is to be convinced of the reliability of God. Isn't that true? To know that he is faithful through every season and every stage of this life, through all the ups and downs and everything in between, that he is faithful. Now, I'm thinking of some of you right now that you got baby stuff all over the place. There's diapers and toys and sippy cups. You probably haven't slept in weeks. You haven't slept well in maybe a year. The good news is that it goes fast. You'll be sleeping soon enough, trust me. The bad news is that it goes fast. So cherish this time that you have. Hug those babies and love those babies and sing to those babies and teach them about Jesus while you can. It could be that the most significant thing that you do in this life isn't anything that you do, but it's who you raise. So pour your life into them. That's why God gave them to you. Now, I know that there are probably some of you who you wish you had a bunch of baby stuff strewn around the house. Maybe you've been trying, but haven't been able to get pregnant. Maybe you've struggled with infertility. Maybe you've had miscarriages and gone through heartbreak. It's just been a hard path for you. You need to know that God is faithful in those seasons too. In fact, the scriptures say to us that God collects all of our tears in a bottle. He cares deeply. He sees and he knows our pain. God knows the desires of your heart. And what I've discovered is that God often opens up unexpected doors of opportunity for you to give that love in a unique way. Be open to that. Lean into his faithfulness and trust him through it, even when it's hard. Maybe you're a kid right now. Like you're somewhere between like the bike stage and, or somewhere around that, right? Listen, let me just say this to you. Just love being a kid right now. Like live your life with joy and passion. Ride like the wind when you get to ride like the wind, right? To try your best to be a good student and be a good friend. Be the kind of kid that stands up for the underdog. Enjoy life, have fun, laugh and sing and dance and play games. And don't let anyone rush you out of that process. And parents, listen, you don't be the one to rob your kids of their childhood. Man, let them be a kid. And better yet, you be a kid with them sometimes. Put the computer down, go jump on the trampoline. Sit around the fire and sing songs. Be silly with them sometimes. Let them teach you how to draw, teach you how to dance, teach you how to roar like a dinosaur. It's been a minute since you've done that, right? Listen, learn more about what they care about than you care to know. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's Taylor Swift, just learn it. Do it together. Why? Because it goes by so fast. Maybe some of you are in the skateboard phase. Everything's super awkward, feeling a little wobbly right now. Everything's so uncertain. Like you don't know what's going on with your body. That's changing. Your voice is changing. Feels like everything about your life is changing. And you just wish that middle school would end. Little secret. It does. Like this too shall pass. It's going to come to an end. Until then, man, I'd encourage you to see yourself how God sees you. You're not some awkward, lanky little kid. You're a precious child of God. Don't see yourself how you think other people see you. And don't get caught up in what you see whenever you're looking in the mirror. No, see yourself how God sees you. Don't be bothered by all that other stuff. You are God's masterpiece, created anew in Christ Jesus to do the things that he planned for you to do long ago. He knit you together. He made you just the way that you are. And it's not a mistake. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. You know that about yourself. Or maybe you're in the stage of life where you just got your license. You're starting to taste some independence. And that's great. That's a fun season. But if you'll always choose to make sure that you stay dependent on God in your life through that season, I promise you, life will go well for you. Maybe you're graduating soon. And you're worried about what you're going to do one day. Listen, hear God saying to you that he knows the plans that he has for you. That he'll give you a future and a hope. You just keep your eyes on him. Lean into his faithfulness. Lean into his wisdom in your life, and he'll order your steps. He'll direct your path. Right now, the most important thing is the person that you're becoming, not so much what exactly you do. That's not the most important thing. And so let God begin to transform you from the inside out. Or maybe you're a parent and you're watching your kids graduate. You're watching them become more independent. You watching them, maybe you walked your daughter down the aisle, now she's married. But you don't know what you're gonna do with an empty nest. Listen, first of all, don't worry too much. I heard that once they get out there and they figure out how expensive everything is, they come back. They're gonna come and they bring their laundry and they bring bills and they bring their whole family with them too. So odds are that might happen. Or maybe you're at the stage of life where you're going through a midlife crisis. And so you're eyeing that Harley. You're eyeing that bike. You're like, oh man, now's the time. Okay, listen, I'm not like dogging on people who go and get motorcycles. That's fine, nothing wrong with that. But listen, instead of chasing some cheap thrill or trying to relive your glory days, man, begin to see this stage of life that you're in as an opportunity to pour your life into mentoring and helping other people. See it as halftime, right? Just halftime. You know, in sports, really great teams, after they come out from halftime, they don't slow down in the third and fourth quarter. No, they keep going. They don't let off the gas. They don't just coast. No, they go even harder in their third and fourth quarter because it was just halftime. Listen, some of you are at halftime. Some of you are in the fourth quarter. And honestly, some of you in overtime. I'm just saying. Listen, maybe you spent the first half chasing success. But now is the time for you to go after being significant. Don't waste all your time playing golf or traveling. No, pour yourself into others. Use your time to help and serve and love people. Live beyond yourself, and you'll be fulfilled in this season of life. And then, if after that you find yourself inching more toward that other walker, just learn to trust the faithfulness of God. He promises to never leave or forsake us, that he'll be with us from walker to walker. And if you'll trust him through all the stages of life, you'll begin to accumulate, and you'll be able to look back and point to so many stories of God's faithfulness in your life. I've got a friend, his name is Bill. He's in his 80s now, and his health is failing. I asked him recently, I was like, hey man, how you doing? Knowing how he's doing. And he just said back to me, he just says, I just know that my time isn't long. But then he just launches straight into all these stories of God's faithfulness in his life. I mean, story after story after story. And in my 30s this, and in my 40s this, and in my 50s this. And I feel like I've done more after I retired than I ever did before I retired. He just goes through this whole thing. You know what his favorite song is? Great is thy faithfulness. It's this old hymn based on a passage in Lamentations chapter 3, where it says, great is his faithfulness. Morning by morning, his mercies are new. I know the song because we sang it in the church that I grew up in. And ever since I was little, I've always found it really interesting how differently old people sing that song compared to how younger people sing that song. Like younger people just kind of mouth the words and muddle their way through. It's just another song. But old people, oh man, they sing that song from their soul. Like they dig deep. Like they sing that song from their toes. And if they got white hair or no hair at all, watch out, because they about to bring the house down. Especially whenever they get to that part of the song where it says, all I have needed, thy hands hath provided. All of a sudden the music swells and they throw their head back and they throw their hands in the air, and you can see the veins just like bursting out of their neck as they belt. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. And then they just collapse back into their seat when the song is over. And you know, it's not the words that they sing as much as it is the way that they sing them that's so intriguing. Like, why is it that they sing that song so differently? Why is it that those who've been walking with God for so many years sing it with such passion and intensity? Well, here's why. It's because they know that God is so faithful. And I say that because there's so many of you in our church that, you're on the younger side, or maybe and many of you are brand new followers of Jesus. And you could say, Kent, like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, God has been so faithful to me in the last 6 weeks, or the last 6 months, or even the last 6 years. And that's really exciting. But wait until you've got 60 years of God's faithfulness under your belt. It's gonna blow you away. You're going to be able to reflect back on decades worth of storms that you were able to weather because of the supernatural help of a good Father. You're going to be able to look back on 60 years of broken relationships that have been put back together through the power of a faithful God. Look back on 60 years of sobriety and sanity because of the one who picked you up out of a pit. 60 years of God providing for your needs. Well, you didn't know where the next paycheck was going to come from. 60 years of prayers that have been answered by a faithful God. And someday, you are going to be the one with wrinkles on your face and on your hands and veins bursting out of your neck as you belt and lift your hands to the sky and sing out with passion, saying, great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Man, I'm telling you, life is so short, but God is so faithful. He promises and provides so much for us. He promises a better place, a heavenly home where pain is no more and every tear is wiped away. And until that day, he promises his presence and his peace to be with us, to give us wisdom and direction, to help us with temptation. He promises to finish the inside out work that he began in us. He promises to never leave or forsake us. He promises that nothing will ever separate us from the unfailing love of God. He promises us an inheritance in heaven. He promises us that he's coming back to make all things new. Listen, you can believe him. He will never lie to you, con you, or cheat you. He won't ghost you, mislead, or mistreat you. He won't tell you one thing and then do another, scheme, coerce, and try to cover his tracks. Because he's not like that. You can believe him. He is true to his word. He never breaks it, ever. His yes is yes through every endeavor. He won't breach a contract. He won't surprise you with the fine print. In him, there is no hint of deceit or malicious intent. His word is his bond. He remains the same yesterday, today, and forever. The faithful one, name above all names. You can believe him. From walker to walker. Life is so short, but God is so faithful. Let me pray for you. God, we love you. Thank you so much that you first loved us. Lord, we know this life is short. We're grateful that you're faithful through every stage and every season of life, that you're with us and for us. And that, God, if we keep our eyes on you, it will go well for us. Lord, I just pray for every person that finds himself in a season that may be challenging right now. I pray you'd meet them right where they are, that you'd encourage them, that they'd be filled up with courage to take another step forward, knowing that you're with them. And Father, for those who are listening right now who are maybe at the place where they're like, I didn't even know you could have a relationship with God. Father, I pray that you would draw them to yourself. In fact, right now, if that's you, if you'd say, man, you talk about God in a way that I've never heard anybody talk about God like that. I didn't know you could know God like that, but I want that. If that's you, I would encourage you, just pray this prayer along with me. Say, Jesus, I ask you to be the forgiver of my sin and the leader of my life. Adopt me into your family as a son or daughter. Help me to live my life for you. I'm grateful for your faithfulness. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, hey, if you prayed that prayer, I want to be the first one to welcome you into God's kingdom. It's the best decision you've ever made. On the hub, you can go ahead and click the box that says follow Jesus. We'll send you some information to follow up and just help you with some next steps. That's a really big deal, so make sure you do that. Everybody else, listen, I love you. It's a great start to the series. God is faithful, from walker to walker. See you next week.
Such a great message, Ken. I don't know about you, but life can get overwhelming at times. And if I'm not careful, I can allow some of that uncertainty to creep in and start to mess with me. But we serve a God who is an endgame kind of God. He's got us and he's with us yesterday, today, and forever. And he doesn't just have good things in store for us someday down the road. He's got them in store for us right here and right now. So let's get after it. Well, thanks so much for being here today. Before you go, would you help us to reach more and more people by taking time to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, and take time to share this on social or with a friend. And I can't wait to see all of you right back here for Mother's Day next week.